All right, Cindy and Olson, how are you this morning?
I'm doing extremely well because
Awesome.
I get up every morning and eat flowers.
Different
Yep.
ones or the same ones?
I, well, right now I have a lot of nasturtium flowers, and I particularly like nasturtiums. I used to grow them
Ooh.
inside when I lived on the East Coast,
Oh,
but here I really have so many seeds from one plant that I can not only give them away, but I use them for pesto, the leaves and the
oh,
stems.
really? For pesto, even with the peppery flavor?
Yeah. Well, the leaves are not as peppery as you think, but I
The
think it's
ones that I've grown seem to be.
you
Maybe it's a
know,
different variety, or maybe it's different
well,
soil conditions.
different soil conditions,
Yep.
you know. Soil conditions, as with wine, make an incredible amount of difference.
Or even maple syrup, for that matter.
That's true.
Yep.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to just
Oh,
pop one in my
munch
mouth
away.
now.
So, what has eating flowers first thing in the morning done for you?
Well, I have a neurological disorder, so it's one that is very, very difficult because it's only a small part of the population. It's called
Mm.
CMT, and they have figured out there's 16 different varieties. So I started getting migraines when I was 7,
Ooh.
and I have found how to live pain-free. But that's a whole nother discussion. But
Right,
one of
which is
the
an
things that
amazing story because you and I have talked about that, and that is definitely worth people hearing. Yes.
But I'm really going to focus today on how people can live with less stress,
Okay.
right? Better food,
Yes.
and just changing a few habits or a way that they think about it,
Okay.
you
And
know?
you have something you've created called the 14-minute meal method. Can you tell us
Yes.
about that?
And the reason that I created that is, first of all, I was, a person because my mother had the same condition and she was under the usual Western care.
Right.
Um, she was in bed quite a bit. She had quite a lot of operations. And I really took over in the kitchen when I was quite young. But
Okay.
I was lucky because I learned from a whole generation of women, my grandmother's age, um, and they taught me, all the ways that people had been making food and what they could got from the garden, right?
Mm.
People that lived through the Depression. So they had lots and lots of ways to use different things. I learned from my, great aunt about eating flowers. So I incorporated from 2 years old into my diet. And I
Sweet.
started by transplanting in April rain in Connecticut a violet plant, which is
I
still
love
my
violet.
favorite flower.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very tasty. Most people put a lot of sugar over it, but you don't
Yes.
have to,
Yep. Yep.
you know? So I realized that it changed my mood. It's a really
Mm.
good way to, interact with the natural world, to actually take it in and have it fresh picked. It's an
Oh gosh, yes.
entirely different situation. So I've always grown herbs inside. I mean, I grew things when I lived in a basement for a couple years under lights. I don't want people to say that they can't get food.
Man, you and I have so much in common. It's wild.
So what the reason that I started doing the 14-minute meal method is that people said, "Oh, Cindy, you could just go and feed a group of 100 people without really thinking about it, without recipes." And I never thought it was anything because, this is the way I was kind of trained to do it. Yes,
Right.
I've learned from chefs and things like that, but, they learn from ingredients to method, right?
Right.
But home cooks are taught about recipes in books and how to
Mm.
follow a recipe. And most recipes, the chefs want to make kind of complicated so that, they're going to suggest gourmet food, right? But I realized during the pandemic that there were all sorts of people that were calling me up saying, Cindy, I don't know what to do. I get my food from fast food and I can't get it
Oh.
anymore. Or I only eat ultra processed food and I've got constipation all the time, or this problem or that problem.
Wow, that's amazing that you got those calls, and actually that's kind of a cool transformative moment.
I was like, wow, so let me
That's
investigate
interesting.
this. So I
Yes.
started, over time, starting to ask people, well, how do you do this? And then I
Mm,
found out that they use so many different tools. By the time they were finished with something that I thought was incredibly easy, like pancakes,
right.
um, all you have to do is put some flour in. And then I found out they use a mix. Well, all they had to do was add water.
Oh
But
my
yet,
goodness.
when I went to their house, they used about 8 different bowls and 4 different tools, 3 spatulas. I'm like,
Good
how
grief.
is
That's
that
crazy.
possible? But they were never really taught how to do things.
Wow.
So they were like, well, that didn't seem to fit. It would seem wrong. So I'm going to do it this way. And it
Wow.
takes like an hour or more.
To mix a
Right.
mix with water.
Right.
That's crazy. Crazy. Okay.
Okay. So I said, there's got to be a way that I think about things because,
Mm-hmm.
I bake without recipes. I do most
Mm-hmm.
everything just from what the ingredients are. I
Yes.
said, I know that I do this. So I started timing myself because I make food every day.
Me
One
too.
good meal a day is good for my health.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, I can do this in like 12 minutes. I can do it in 10 minutes, right?
Wow.
Because I use scissors over a pan on high heat to cook anything, right?
Oh,
I put in the oil. I put in, onions, garlic, that sort of stuff, because that needs a little bit longer to cook.
yes.
Carrots, right? And then I add whatever particular ingredient that I'm going to have. Now, I'm an
Yes.
omnivore, so yes, I do
Me
eat
too.
meat, but
Yep.
I eat lots of fish, right?
Wild
But
caught, I'm guessing.
absolutely, I grew
Yep.
up on cod, for cod fishing, so yes.
Oh, nice.
But the thing is, I realized that I use it as a condiment because I learned
Hmm.
a lot in New York City, different cuisine every year.
Yes.
And I started to think of protein as a condiment. Now, I
Interesting.
I garden, yes, I exercise, but I don't, go to the gym. I
Right.
don't go run marathons.
Right.
I'm just, how should I put it? Not using all that much in the way of my muscular skeletons, right?
So are you saying then that your requirement for protein is less
Is
than if you were
is
doing all of those kinds of activities?
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
people that have a beer belly and go and down, you know, basically a pound of meat have no need for that.
Correct.
They're not paying attention to their bodies. And
Right.
that's the other
Exactly.
thing that I became really aware of. I know when I need a pick me up, right?
Yep.
And I'll go and pick some petals, right? I'll go and have some sorrel, right? This is very easy to grow in
There it is.
a lot of different
It's a big
locations.
leaf.
It's
Yeah.
a big leaf, but it comes smaller,
Yes.
depending on where you're growing it
Right.
and at different times of the year. But it actually is a perennial and it's very underused and it's
Mm.
actually incredibly good for you.
So
Some
what are
people
what
call
are
it
some of the health
functional.
benefits?
Well, I basically think that it has really kept me and my immune system up.
Really? I didn't
Right.
realize. Okay.
So I would say if you're not adding greens, and that's the last thing that I add to my dinners,
Mm-hmm.
right? Remember, we started with some oil, we
Yes.
added
Some
in
onion,
onions and
garlic.
garlic, then some kind of protein.
Right.
Then I would add in, smaller vegetables, like, peas or that sort of
Right.
thing on top of that. Things you
Yep.
don't want to cook that much. At this
Right.
time of year, asparagus
Right.
tips, right?
Ah, yes.
You know? So just whatever ingredients
So
you
you're
have. Now,
sautéing all of this on a stovetop.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you really don't want to cook it long.
Right.
So even though this seems like a very large leaf, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're still going to rip it off. Now, people say get rid of the stems. I
Okay.
do not get rid of stems. I cut them up smaller,
Oh, okay.
but I
That
don't get
makes
rid of
sense.
them.
Sure.
They're
They've
definitely
got value
edible,
to them.
right?
Yeah, especially cut
So,
small. And did you
yeah,
say in the beginning that you're using scissors to cut?
I do. I use kitchen scissors for almost
Interesting.
everything.
Wow. And the
Yeah.
reason you do that is because it's faster, or you like, what is it
It's
exactly?
faster, and also when with my disease, sometimes I have to be very careful with my knife skills. I've gotten better over the
Oh, I
years.
see.
That
Okay.
was that was difficult for me. So
Gotcha.
I used scissors right from the beginning of cooking. And I
That's
thought
really
everybody else
cool.
did. And people thought, "What are kitchen scissors?" But I mean, it's easy to cut up meat that way, you know?
Wow. That's impressive.
So what I also find is if you add the greens in last, you want them to stay green.
Yes. And so you're
Okay.
just sort of quickly cooking them so that they're breaking
Right?
down a little bit, being more digestible
Right.
versus, yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
And do you eat raw salads at all, or
I
are you
do,
most?
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, we do too, like
Absolutely.
almost every day.
Yeah. Um,
And, though, one thing I was just talking to somebody recently about raw foods. And if
mhm.
somebody doesn't have good digestive fire, as they would call it in Ayurveda, then raw salads are probably not going to be great for them. It could be, antagonizing their system. But if you have a strong digestion and, you process things pretty well, then I think, eating raw
Right.
is great in addition to cooked foods as well.
Absolutely. So I call on people to assemble things,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Because so many times you can use a food processor. You can mix. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when I came, smoothies were the thing in California. I
Oh,
mean,
yes.
there's smoothie shops on just about every other corner with your yoga shops, right?
And are they
But
still doing juice shops? Is juicing
yeah, but
popular?
it's kind of gone down because what they did was basically just give people a lot of fruit. And
Right.
I'm not saying that you can't have fruit. I
Right,
mean,
but
it
to have it
definitely part of my
exclusively
diet.
fruit.
No, you can't do
Right.
anything exclusively. So
Agreed.
that's why I like to eat lots of different plants, lots of different color, lots of,
Yes. Eat the
you know,
rainbow.
things from the sea, things from the land.
Yes.
Okay. But
Yes.
in moderation, because I was taught I had to be part of the clean plate club.
Oh, yes.
So if I go to a restaurant and there's a big plate of food, I feel obliged to eat it.
So does
So
my
when I'm
husband.
doing it for myself, I use small plates,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Wow.
And eat
So,
slowly.
okay.
So I
Eating slowly
say
is very good for digestion, right?
prep to plate, right, is
Prep to plate.
14 minutes. So you can get there and then spend time with your family, your friends,
Right.
right? That is part of the human experience.
Yes.
And chew your food, right? And enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because when you're making it yourself and you add the herbs on last and maybe garnish it with some flowers and then eat the flowers, right? It
Mm.
makes it a totally different experience.
Oh, I
It's a
agree with you. And actually,
celebration.
nasturtiums have such beautiful colored flowers that putting them in a salad, especially,
Yeah.
is kind of a game changer. I've done that at
Now,
the farm.
now,
Yeah.
I want you to realize that when you use something for the first time, just try a petal.
Ah, that's a good
Don't,
idea.
don't, see how
Yes.
you are after 20 minutes if you've had some kind of reaction. There's a
Ah,
lot of flowers that are edible. Basically, all the herbs go to flower, and you can eat those flowers, and they're delicious,
yes.
but they have a tendency to be smaller,
Right.
right? A lot of the flowers that we like, Johnny jump ups, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pansies, those are the
Right.
different names for it. They grow more flowers if you pick them,
Yes. It
okay?
stimulates them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I, as a child, pick lots and lots of them,
Mm.
right? And, you can make art out of them. You can do all sorts of things, right?
Yes. Dry
So,
them, press them. Yeah, there are
absolutely,
actually so many projects you can do with flowers, dried and fresh,
absolutely,
making wreaths, hair wreaths and wreaths for your
absolutely.
door. Yeah, one of my favorites are oh gosh, what are they? The little, can't even think of the name of it. It's a flower that dries so that it feels like paper, and it comes in different colors. Oh gosh, it'll come back
Status?
to me. Say it again.
Status?
No, that's one of them, though. That does
Yeah.
do that. You're right.
Yeah.
Whatever the name of it is will come back to me. But yes, making different art projects and decorative
Absolutely.
things is so fun to do. Or potpourri. That's one of the
Yeah.
things I love. I have rose bushes, and rose being one of the highest vibrational oils, and
Hmm.
beautiful and has great smell. I take the petals when they're falling off and just collect them and let them dry. And I even have this cool lamp that's a glass jar that I've filled with all the rose petals that are dried. It's pretty neat.
It
So
really is.
what are some other great tips that you have for folks around cooking?
Well, I really suggest that we are wasting an incredible amount of food in America.
Mm,
They've done studies, and it's sometimes up to 40% of the food that you buy, you throw out. Now, with
mm,
food prices the way they are, and I don't think they're going to be coming down soon,
right,
if you just stop your food waste.
right.
So, so organize your refrigerator in ways that things that are perishable that you buy,
Mm,
like greens, right? You're going to eat those first,
right.
right? And make sure that things do not sit,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if
Yep.
they start to sit, cut them up, put them in the freezer, right?
Ah,
So one of the things people love avocados, right?
yes,
And it's very good for you. It's a great fat, right?
yes.
It's absolutely a wonderful thing. But if you get it, it's very hard to get them so that they are ripe. So then you have to
Mm-hmm.
have them sit around, and then they might just turn, a little too
Brown.
ripe.
Yes,
So you have to pay attention.
yes.
And the thing about your diet and eating is that you have to have an incredible awareness of how the food makes you feel. Because
Mm,
I think everyone has a personalized diet.
no question.
So many people say, well, I'm on this diet or I'm on that diet. But I'll tell you, I know a lot of people that are quote unquote Mediterranean and they're on that diet. But
Mm,
what does that really mean?
yeah,
People in the Mediterranean go out and forage quote unquote weeds and
right.
have that as a really mainstay for every single meal.
Yep.
But in Mediterranean cookbooks, they
They
don't
don't talk about
mention
that,
that.
do they?
No, no, no. They say you can have
Yes,
pasta and, canned tomatoes and this and that.
exactly.
And I would say, listen, start to learn what's around you, what's growing, and grow something yourself, whether
Mm-hmm.
inside, outside. There's lots and lots of ways to grow. And the other part is enhancing your soil by
Right.
composting.
Yep.
So, what I really believe the 14-minute meal method is about is just simply a quick way to get food on the table
Yep. That's
so
healthy.
that you can enjoy the rest of your life and be less
Mm,
stressed
nice.
because you don't have to run around and say, oh my God, I wanted to make this today, but
Yeah.
I don't have this ingredient, so therefore I can't make it.
Mm-hmm.
And with this method, you can learn basically a process, a flow chart. And you can say, hey, today I want to use a food processor, right? And, put it onto some kind of, something that I had yesterday. I don't want to eat it the same way.
Mm-hmm.
You can then put it on some toast or something like that and put it, quickly in the oven,
Yeah.
right?
So what would
So
be a good
there's
example
lots
of
of
something
different
like
ways.
that?
So a lot of people like pizza,
Right.
right? And they spend definitely half an hour, maybe longer, getting pizza delivered to them or having to pick it
Right.
up after work. And I'm saying you can do it a lot quicker.
Yep.
Now, when I was in college, I used, basically English muffins,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And that
Yeah.
was a really big hit.
Yep.
But what people didn't realize that I had made, because I used to feed a lot of the people in the dorm, I would,
Oh.
make a spaghetti sauce or something like that because people like that,
Yes.
right? And then I would use that and I would food process it and add some herbs on top and
Mm.
a little bit of cheese, throw it into the, a hot oven and
Right.
then bring it out like 5 minutes later. And it was
Nice.
crispy and everybody loved it. But
Nice.
you
And it
can
was
do
so
that
much better ingredients, I'm sure.
make that with dough. You can do a lot of other things.
Yeah,
And
I actually make my own pizza, and I've actually finally perfected the pizza dough so that it actually gets, sort of like a deep dish or just
yeah.
fluffier. I don't like the flat kind. But yeah, just
So,
kneading the dough for 6 minutes seems to be the game changer when you use yeast.
yep. So, I mean, I'm not saying that you have to, do things in a very particular way, but it's
Right.
understanding the process of things,
Yes.
and that there are only plan overs, not leftovers.
Oh, that's nice. And you're
Plan for
utilizing the
yourself.
things that you have versus, like you said, you're not getting stuck thinking, oh gosh, I need X ingredients, so I've got to run to the store and that's an effort. You're taking what you have and making it into nutritious, yummy meals that are not really long to take, time to cook.
Right. So, what I would suggest is find out what you really like to eat. You understand your palate,
Right.
right? Cut down on a lot of that ultra processed stuff. It's going up in price anyways.
Exactly. I know. I can't believe I mean, I don't buy that stuff anyway, but I'm just shocked when I look at how the junk food is really expensive now.
It's incredible, and it's only going to go up in price.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I, always believe that you can find food, but you have to make it like an adventure. If you have
Mm.
kids, right, go to the farmer's market, but just
Yes.
don't go there. Make it an event. Talk to people, learn about the food, ask
Right.
questions.
So you're creating a community around the food, which is one of the things that I think people really like about farmers markets or farm stands too. Because our farm stand, people come and just hang out. Actually, during COVID, people
Mhm.
came to the farm stand because it was a safe place to be because we're open air and they wanted to connect with others. So, they'd buy their vegetables, but they'd stand there for 30 minutes talking to people, 6 feet apart.
Right.
Yeah.
So life did change, but
Yes.
I also know that people expect delivery. So a lot of
Ah,
Americans can get something from community supported agriculture. Now,
mm,
hopefully, that those websites will stay up, you
right.
know, but
Right.
but the thing is, you can get, vegetables delivered to your door
Yeah.
from local farms,
Right.
right? And many of them all year round. You can
Right.
order really bison, right, from a lot of the
Mm,
tribal lands.
right.
They're growing really good bison, very healthy. You can
Grass
get
fed,
that
grass finished,
delivered,
I'm
grass
assuming.
fed, right?
Yep.
So there's a lot of things that you can get over the internet now that
Yes,
weren't available
that's
before.
right.
And if you can't actually, order it and you're a single person, go
Mhm.
in with some other people,
Yes, yes.
start to make food with other people
Yes,
because
I've heard a number of people that are single say, "Oh, I don't really like to cook for myself. I'll do it when there's more people." But so your suggestion is right on. If you can create a little community of neighbors even,
yes,
maybe do potluck dinners together or something.
and it makes eating much more fun, right?
Yes, it does.
And I think one meal a day, if you really pay attention to that one meal and it
Yeah,
has all the elements,
right.
right? And and you do need some roughage, right?
Mhm.
Quote
Yep,
unquote, you know?
fiber.
So fiber is fantastic, and I add a lot of nuts, seeds,
Ah,
right? And
yes. Do you
I'll
soak
even
yours typically?
well, it depends on the seeds.
Yeah,
Chias, yes. Chia
yes.
seeds, yes. But a lot of times I just use a coffee grinder to grind up
Ah,
some seeds,
right.
right?
Because I,
So
I
I have
think I've heard people talk about the enzyme inhibitors in raw seeds like pumpkin or sunflower, that it's ideal if you can soak them overnight. Then and then rinse them because then you get rid of that enzyme inhibitor. But I've done the same thing. I've ground up
yeah.
seeds totally fresh too.
And what I would say is you can cook them. Like I like
That's
amaranth
true.
cooked, but amaranth, you can also eat the leaves, you can eat the flowers,
Oh, wow.
and it grows in the worst soil.
Yes, it
And
does. Like dandelions, actually,
yeah, right.
which
And
are incredibly
dandelions,
nutritious.
especially in the spring, are so
Yes.
delicious,
Yes. They're not
right?
quite as bitter as they get over the length
Over
of the
over the
summer.
season, right?
Yeah.
So, I use a lot of forage material, but you don't have to
Mm,
do that. So what I
right.
want people to know is whatever skills they have.
Right.
Like if you can boil water, you can boil eggs,
That's
right?
right.
And while I'm cooking other food, I make sure that I'm boiling at another, you know,
Oh.
at the same time,
That's smart.
maybe 4 or 6 eggs,
And then you
right?
just stick them in the refrigerator.
Stick them in the refrigerator and then have them and add them to salads with some nuts
Nice.
and some fruit.
Yeah.
But you could also add that to cooked food, right?
Sure.
I said put in the herbs at the end, but the other thing you can do is you can add in some blueberries, right? You can add in
Mm.
some raspberries. You can add in some walnuts. You can add,
Wow.
do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just whatever you have available.
Right.
So you don't have to be wedded to recipes. You can be wedded to the process and the flow of food.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that's the
I
same with your
typically like to use recipes as a guide, and then I use my intuition. It's like, okay, so those are the ingredients, those are the general amounts. Now I'll do it my way.
right.
But I've been cooking since I was 10, kind of like you. So
Yeah.
I feel more comfortable doing that than, maybe somebody that's just sort of new to cooking. But I think a lot of us have that intuitive knowledge inside. We just need to allow ourselves to experience it and play with it.
Yes. And that's really part of the whole process of really becoming aware of how you're affected by food.
Mm,
And in
that's a good
turn,
point.
you can affect other people,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
I know that I'm going to be, cooking for people. And I always say that cooking can be a prayer or a meditative process.
I
And
find, and a creative outlet too,
right,
right?
absolutely.
I mean, how many times have people walked into your home when you're cooking something and they say, "Oh, that smells so good." So their senses are already being primed for
Absolutely.
what you're going to serve.
So I grew up on bread. And I must admit, I don't
On
cook
bread,
bread.
did you say?
Bread, yes.
Okay.
That was the staple of life. But
Ah,
I, as a postmenopausal woman, can't really seem to have as much bread as I used to. So I
I
don't
hear you.
cook it very often. But
Yes.
when I lived in New York City and I had lots of artists come to visit, they used to say,
Ah,
your house always smells like bread.
what a lovely
Because
essence.
I would make bread so that everyone at least knew that they were going to have fresh bread when they came to my
Mm.
house,
Oh, that's so lovely.
you know. But
Mm.
you if you say that you can't have any carbohydrates, it's really possible to live, especially if you add greens. And
Yes.
collard greens are going to take longer to cook because they're
Hmm.
thicker,
Yep.
right? And you have to go by, if the spinach is very baby and things like that, you hardly cook it at all.
Exactly.
Watercress, you hardly cook at all, right?
Yeah, and watercress is one of the most nutritious greens there is.
It really is.
Yeah.
So what I would say is some of the greens that, we're like saying, oh, iceberg lettuce, yes, it lasts. And
Mm.
you can put iceberg lettuce in a pan and cut it so that it's like half a head. And
Mm.
you can drink that water and it will help you with lowering your sugar.
Oh,
So
that's
there's a lot
nice.
of things that are really underutilized,
Right.
right? But also can, really help us.
Yes.
So I would say anyone can grow greens inside.
Right.
Right? Doesn't have to
Even
be
if you don't
grown
have a
up.
sunny windowsill, you can get grow lights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you can basically have them get a little leggy and they still
Right.
grow. Lettuce is
Or
a
even
good thing to start
sprouts,
with.
right? You can
Yep.
sprout seeds and you don't really even need light for that.
Yep. And the
Yeah.
other thing I want to suggest is mushrooms, fungi. That's a
Ah,
whole
yes.
discussion in itself.
Indeed.
But because of my situation, I use lion's mane a lot. Okay,
Ah,
because I am regrowing my nervous system,
that's fantastic. Yes.
and I'm getting
I've heard so many good things about lion's mane, and you're living proof that it's
yep,
helping you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I just am so excited that we are able to nourish ourselves. And
Yes.
when we nourish ourselves, we are actually replenishing the planet because
Mm-hmm.
we're starting to pay attention. We're not being extractive because
Right.
one celery that you can regrow from the bottom of the celery
Right.
can produce so many seeds if you let it.
Mm.
Okay?
Yep.
Hundreds, if not 1,000 from
It's
one
pretty
plant.
remarkable when you see how the system of nature is so elegantly designed so that, these tiny seeds grow into things like trees even, it's constantly
Absolutely.
amazing to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what's exciting is you and your family can start to really realize you're part of the biosphere.
Yes.
So when we pay attention, right? Go outside for 15 minutes
Mm-hmm.
every day.
Yep.
Your life is going to change.
Right.
And food should be a celebration every
Yes.
day, not a drudgery, not like, oh, what am I going to make for dinner? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. You know,
And like
stop
you
with the
said,
takeout.
using it as a meditation. So I can imagine people saying to themselves, I'm so busy, I don't have time to make food. But we're only talking 14 minutes to make a nutritious meal. And if you use it as a meditative time or a time to really connect to your senses, then it becomes even more than just preparing a meal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank you, Amy.
Thank you,
It's
Cindy. This is such good
so great to
information.
talk to you.
Thank
And
you.
I want everyone to realize that we're coming together, collaborating in
Yes.
different ways. And, no matter what happens in the world, your world can be better.
Yes.
And I am so excited to teach people and really share with them and
Yes.
inspire them to be creative and excited about a healthier way of living.
I hear that. And I can see it and feel it in your passion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.